You know when you find that one show that absolutely hooks you? The world is interesting and clearly well thought out, the characters are all three-dimensional and incredibly interesting, and there's just something that grips your very heart, so hard that you can feel it holding on to your very soul and refusing to let go, so much so that when you finally finish or catch up to the show, you can just feel this void in your heart where your obsession and love for the show used to be, and now you just have to consume every possible piece of media this show has to fill that hole in your heart that is left by the show. No? Just me? Okay. Well, anyway, lately that show for me has been Mushoku Tensei, Jobless, Reincarnation. Mushoku Tensei, often called the grandfather of all isekai, is about a 34-year-old NEET who completely failed in almost every part of his life. He left school to stay inside to play video games. He is clearly not healthy and has absolutely no social life and seems to owe money to people who just you don't want to owe money to. This all comes to a head when our protagonist runs in front of a truck while trying to save some high school students and gets himself... He wakes up. He hears a language he doesn't understand and is held by people he doesn't know. At first he is obviously quite confused until he looks at his hands and realizes that he, of course, has been reincarnated into another world with his cell phone. No, wait, that's another show. He was reincarnated into another world as a baby. No, we're not talking about that show. Okay, obviously the trope of being isekai has grown quite dull and is associated with series being generally pretty bad. But when Mushoku Tensei was first being serialized, it was a pretty new concept which Mushoku Tensei made excellent use of. In fact, it used its trope so well that it came to inspire hundreds, if not thousands of other series that also had their main character being teleported into another world. This is why Mushoku Tensei has been crowned the grandfather of all isekai, as it was revolutionary for its time and pioneered a lot of the tropes we see now. And honestly, you can really feel how a lot of the isekai we get now are kinda just watered down versions of what Mushoku Tensei accomplished. And you can really see that by how well Mushoku Tensei holds up now. It has an incredibly rich world with an incredible amount of thought and planning behind it. I mean, the creator of the series made up a whole new language. Not once, not twice, but 3 times! They made up 3 different languages. Like what? And it doesn't even end there. Each of the languages has their own grammar and quirks with the language. It's incredible. So when I say that this world has lore, I mean that this world has lore. And there is story in everything, because everything is so well thought out and used for storytelling. See that random ruin we get to see in Season 2? It's actually a gigantic fortress crafted by the old Demon King, who was a master of earth magic, which he used to travel underneath human fortresses in the first human-demon war and then smite them from underneath. See this cool town Rudius goes to in Season 1? It's actually one of the bigger cities in the country, which thanks to its geological location is a gathering for traders from all over, which leads to its town having an incredibly booming economy. It's also where a high-ranking member of the Boras branch of the Grey Rat family, who lost his claim to lead his family, lives. Oh, didn't I tell you? Just like the world itself, the people and families in this world are just as well crafted, with them all having their own lore and constantly having political battles in the background. At the start of the series, Rudius, who is the name given to our main character upon being born into the new world, is born into a little village as the son of a knight named Paul, Grey Rat, and a mage named Zenith Grey Rat. At first it looks like a typical starting town that most isekai protagonists are sent to at the start of the journey, but as Rudy is sent away to a greater city in the Asura Kingdom to tutor Eris, a daughter of the Boreas branch of the Grey Rat family, we learn that the kingdom as well as the general region of Fitoa are all under noble control, with Rudy's hometown as well as the town he now lives in being under Grey Rat control, which in and of themselves are split into 4 branches: Cypherus, Boreas, Eros, and Notos. Each branch controls different parts of the kingdom, while still cohering to the king. Basically, it's a feudalistic society. But what is interesting is all the politics that are going on in the background of the show. We are told that Eris' father, Philip Boreas Greyrat, lost a succession war and is constantly trying to keep Rudius' identity under wraps. We later realize that this is because Rudius is from a different branch of the Greyrat family than Philip, which means that starting town Paul was overseeing was controlled by a different branch of the family. We then realized just how quick these families are to usurp each other when Aries' grandfather is executed as a result of the Mana disaster that would come up later. Don't worry about it, we'll get to it when we get to it. Effectively stripping Philip's line of the Boras family completely powerless politically. But where Mushoku Tensei truly shines, most of all, isn't in its world building, although it is one of the best in all of anime manga, or its politics, who are also incredibly interesting and well thought out. No, where Mushoku Tensei truly shines is in its characters. Mushoku Tensei pushes for the idea that all humans are flawed and that we can all make horrible choices, but that those mistakes doesn't have to define us and stop us from evolving. That is as long as we learn from our past behavior and improve ourselves. We are all worthy of a second chance, or a second life, if you will. We see a clear example of this philosophy with Paul Greyrat, Rudy's father and a serious sexual deviant. This man isn't just horny on maid, he is down abysmal! We learn that Paul has slept with almost every woman he has ever known and has even forced himself onto some in the past. Although he has clearly become better at containing his lust throughout the years, now that he has a family and a wife, he still makes a slip up and has an affair with the family's maid. In the show we are told that the housemaid, Lilia Greyrat, actually seduced Paul on purpose out of her own lust, but that still doesn't clear Paul from a guilt. Paul still made the choice to go through with the affair and got Lilia pregnant because of it. The show even acknowledges that Paul is truly scum because of the way he has let his lust control him throughout his life. But this isn't all there is to Paul. Scum as he may be, he is also a loving father and truly grieves the fact that he's never gotten to parent Rudius, being as Rudius is, a 34-year-old man in a child's body. He is truly strong and uses that strength to protect those who are weaker than him. But he also realizes the importance of strength, and he teaches that to Rudy. He is also unfortunately known to jump to conclusions, which is another negative trait that he shows. Yeah, in the early part of Mushoku Tensei, Paul is truly scum, but he is also a person worth respecting. And this is how he stays, as he has no real reason to grow outside of breaking up his family. Or at least that's until episodes 16 and 17, where we once again get to see Paul. You see, around halfway throughout the series, a freak mana disaster happens which displaces everyone in the Ashura Kingdom, leading to its destruction. We follow Rudy and Aries as they try to journey back home from the demon continent after being displaced there. But later on, we get to see Paul's perspective. We find his son Rudy, who he was sure would have made it back home by himself by now. After sitting down with Rudy, he gets to hear all about Rudy's adventures and what an incredible journey has been on in the demon continent. Hearing that Rudy has not even thought about the other victims of the disaster pushes Paul over the edge and he snaps, berating Rudy for not even thinking about the fate of his loved ones and instead just adventuring with his girlfriend and their new demon bodyguard. Things quickly get violent when Rudy starts dragging up old history as a way to hurt his father, but the fight is broken up by Norn. After the confrontation, we find Paul drinking himself to death as a friend sits next to him. He asks Paul why he can't just be happy that Rudy is safe and sound, and if left Paul and Rudy alone, they're just sitting there on each side of the table in silence, neither quite knowing what to say to the other than some small talk. Until Rudius asks Paul why he came. Taking the opportunity, Paul apologizes for having put his extreme expectations on Rudius and acknowledges that Rudy probably had a tougher time than most being thrown into the demon continent at the ripe old age of 10 with nothing but a 12-year-old girl who he had to protect and his staff. But Rudy refutes. He admits that his journey really hasn't been hard and that he has just been selflessly enjoying his adventure without even thinking of anyone being teleported as he was. After Rudy's confession, a new silence breaks out, with Paul clearly unsure of what to say and Rudy's ashamed of having been enjoying his last 2 years. Attempts to break the silence comes out from both sides, with Rudy's asking about Paul's letter and Paul asking what Rudy plans to do now that he has new information about his family. But you can still feel the tension and silence between them, almost as if a spell has been cast, preventing each of them to truly reach an understanding, with neither being sure. The pinnacle of masculinity, sitting on the brink of tears over his failures and over how the fact that he has his son back and that he might lose him again. Upon seeing this, Rudy comes up with a new suggestion: to act like the day before had never happened. To pretend like today was the first time they had met in years, not completely understanding what Rudy means, Paul unassuredly gets down on his knees and is distracted by Rudy, and catches him as Rudy jumps into his arms. Almost like playing at the scene of a happy son meeting his dad again. They embrace for a while, until Rudy's emotions of sadness washing over Paul as he is finally hugging his long-lost son again. His emotion of love so sincere that it even affects Rudy, who still had been playing his part almost like a character. And so, they sit there, apologizing to each other. Father and son, finally reunited again after all this time, finally getting through to each other. I love Paul as a character. He is a womanizing asshole whose sexual deviancy should have landed him on a list somewhere, but he is also a strong man who truly loves his family. He is a man who makes mistakes, but has the strength to put his pride aside and reach out again. He is a man who can grow and overcome his past misdeeds and become a better person, as we see him do after his reconciliation with Rudius. And he is a prime example of one of the biggest themes in Mushoku Tensei. Our misdeeds don't define us. We see this everywhere, from Aries growing out of being a spoiled brat to a caring person who can even be more level-headed than Rudius. Regard's journey of restoring the spared reputations, and Roxy returning home after having fled so many years ago. But no one exemplifies this theme more than the main character of the show himself, the post-need sexual deviant Rudius Greyrat. But his character is so incredibly deep and well written that he deserves his own video. So subscribe when that video comes out, or if you're from the future, click right here and watch it right now. This has been a dive into why I love Mushoku Tensei, but I can promise you that I still have a ton to say about this wonderful world and its characters. Like I said, I got quite obsessed with it. Anyway, I will absolutely make more videos about this series, so subscribe if you want to see more Mushoku Tensei content from me, or if you just want to geek out with me. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video and comment what you love about the series. And check out my other videos where I talk about the other series that I'm obsessed with. Yeah, there are a lot. Well, that's been it, folks. Thank you so incredibly much for watching, and remember, stay jinxed.